And we'll start with a word of prayer and jump in and just share a few things, and then we'll have a chance for some Q&A, and so to answer any questions you have at the end as well. So let's just bow our heads for prayer. Dear God, I just want to thank you for everybody that's here, all the teams, all the kids that are represented through the coaches, and those who haven't been able to make it tonight but may be listening later. I just want to ask you, be with them, be with the kids, give them courage and persistence. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so tonight we want to talk about the tournament day itself. And give me just a sec to get my screen set up here. We're going to talk about the tournament day, what to expect at that. If you have been a coach before and you've coached previous tournaments, this may be a review for you, but there might be some things you pick up from it as well. But otherwise it will be something new to you. So let me just share my screen here. So I'm going to start out with a very basic Word document, and that is, so what does the day look like? So this is okay, can you see my Word document? I don't think I'm sharing right. Hold on. Let me try this again. No, that should be right. Yep. All right. There we go. That's better. Okay, so this is basically what the flow of the day looks like. So you will receive communication from your tournament director. You should start getting that for the early tournaments. You'll be getting that in the next week or two, probably from them. If not sooner, you'll be getting them some basic information, and they're going to let you know what time registration is. And so the gym will open up. You will have in the gymnasium, you'll have a pit area, which will basically be a table with 2 chairs. There's power associated with that, so you can recharge. There'll be power somewhere there where you can recharge your robot batteries or your laptop as you need it during the day. And that's kind of your home base. So that's where you set up. That's where you can work on it. There will be a couple practice tables in the pits. So when we talk about pits, we think about NASCAR pits. This is where you work on the robot between laps, so to speak, between matches and rounds, and throughout the day. So that's kind of going to be your home base, will be that pit area. The very first thing that happens in the morning after you're there and checked in, there'll be a period of time when you need to be there and checked in. And during that registration, one of the biggest things that you bring in for that are your team rosters. And your rosters need to be printed from the first website. And that basically, we've talked about that on the last call. And I can put a link to that. We'll talk about the team registration just a little bit, but the youth members, the parents have to sign a consent and release form. This is separate from any field trip consent forms you have. This is for the event itself. So not for any travel or anything like that. So this needs to be done, and the parents can sign it online, and then you'll have everybody on your roster, and you can print that up from your first dashboard. Fairly straightforward process. The biggest thing you need to do is give your parents your team number, that your first Lego League Challenge team, and that what your team number is, and then they can do the consent, and they will show up on your list there, and you can accept them into your team. So, but once you come in, then you have just a little bit of time. There'll be a coach meeting in the morning. This is a time when the tournament director, head referee, judge advisor, anybody like that, especially the head referee, gets to have just a little bit of a talk with everybody, answer any basic questions, do any final review of what the event may look like, and what to expect during that day, and any announcements, where things are located, that kind of thing. Then as soon as the coaches meeting is over, you'll go straight into judging and your practice rounds. So in the morning, this is the morning time. In the morning, you'll be judging and practice rounds. So, and we'll talk about the judging session. You'll have 1 30-minute judging session, and then you will have 1 practice match that you will have at the competition tables. The only time you go to the competition tables is either during a practice match and a scheduled practice match, or during one of your official matches. There will be tables, there will be challenge sets in the pit area, so you don't have to bring your own with you. They'll be there for you to work with, and you just have to take turns, but there'll be enough there for you to work with. So while you're not in judging, you can be fine-tuning your robot, making sure everything works, and also between each one of your rounds, the matches that you have, competition matches, you'll be able to do that. So you'll get a detailed schedule of exactly when your judging session is, and your practice rounds that will be coming to you from your tournament director. And you'll get any final updates. There might be some changes if things change just a little bit between what's something that might be sent out to you ahead of time and what happens that day. You'll get that. So that goes on in the morning. Now the judging rooms, and we'll come back and talk about the judging, but the judging this is something that goes on in a room. This isn't the kids are not making a presentation to a big audience. They're just they're doing a presentation, having a conversation with a panel of judges. Fairly low keyed as far as that goes, but important. Then there's usually a lunchtime. The larger the tournament, sometimes that lunch is staggered, so it won't necessarily stop for a lunch, but you'll just have that lunch during that time. If it's a smaller tournament, you have a little bit more flexibility in the schedule. You might have half an hour to 45 minutes for lunch there. The tournament will let you know if you need to be responsible for your own lunch, or if some tournaments will have the opportunity for your teams to purchase lunches from them. Lunch is not included in it. So anyway, just be aware of that. You'll listen again watch for communication from your tournament director as far as what that goes in there. But whether you need to be responsible for your lunch. This isn't going to be a time you won't have time to leave the campus, leave the venue wherever it is located, and go get lunch. So if you do need to get your own lunch, you'll need to have somebody take care of that and bring that to you there for that. Okay, so after lunch then is opening ceremony. So the afternoon is the public part of it. This is where so your parents, board members, different people in your community, anybody's welcome to come and watch the tournament. What goes on in the morning is not super exciting. So really in the afternoon, starting at that opening ceremonies, that's when the public part of it starts. There'll be a national anthem, some initial things that go through fairly quickly, and then recognition of teams, and then we'll jump right into the 3 rounds. So you have 3 rounds, and you get the best score out of the 3. So whichever one scores the best is what you have, and you have a little bit of time between each match to go back and fine tune and get everything running the way, in case something doesn't work quite the way you expect it, you can get that going. And then there'll be a little bit of a break for teardown for you to put up your stuff, and then there'll be the award ceremony. So that's just kind of an overview of what the day looks like, what to expect in the day and how that flows. Any questions about that flow? And we'll come back and talk about the judging in more detail here. All right. In which case, I'm going to change my sharing here. Give me just a second. And all right, so let's talk about the judging. I have looked at different judging. We've talked about this website here before, firstlegoleague.org/season, and I will drop this into the chat here for you, but you probably are aware of this site already. But this is kind of a very important site that has a lot of different information here available to you. And one of the pieces of information here is the challenge judging section in here. And there's a number of things. Some of these are also available in the various printed material you received as a team. But there's rubrics, and we'll take a look at the rubrics. And then there's a judging session flow chart. And we'll take a look at some of these here and what that would look like. So First of all, let's take a look at the judging session flow chart. And I believe this is also in your team leader guide. So this is what your time will look like. So you will have 30 minutes in which to present to the judges. And this is how you need to budget your time. So as you prepare with your students, your team members, you want to go through with them and help them kind of budget their time, make sure that everything is covered in the amount of time that they have, so that they can get everything covered and not run out of time. So basically, when you come in, you'll have a couple minutes just for introductions. When you go into the room, a couple things as far as a coach is concerned. Only at our tournaments, only one adult coach or mentor is allowed in the room with the students during the judging session. This isn't for a group of adults to be in there. One person can come in. It's important, I think, for coaches to see what's going on, because when you get the rubrics back, you can kind of go, well, that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense, or, we could change this. We can just kind of make, you can kind of make sense out of that. It helps you learn and grow too as you do that. So, but when you go in as a coach, you may not help the students at all. When you're in the hallway, you're a coach. As soon as you walk in that door, you're just an observer, sitting quietly in the corner, or not necessarily a corner, but you know what I mean, figuratively in the corner. Just you're an observer. So the students, anything that they have, they need to be ready to go with that. Do not expect technology there. Don't expect a screen for a PowerPoint. And we really don't recommend that in a lot of ways. Mainly, there's a couple of reasons I don't recommend PowerPoints for kids. One is kids tend to just read off the PowerPoint, and they don't really use it, in a lot of time. It ends up hurting them more than helping them in many cases. So that's difficult for them. The other thing is if they're planning to plug into some projector, if the technology doesn't work right, then that can fluster them, and then it throws them off their game there. So generally, we don't expect that for them. The innovation, so you will have then 2 minutes to come in and get it set up, the students to get set up. They will have 5 minutes for a live presentation about their project. I have seen skits. I have seen kids just talking through what they've done. I have seen a prototype of what they have to be displayed there. A number of different ways. There's not one right or wrong way to do it, but you want to cover the information. And when we talk about covering the information, I'm going to jump here to the rubric. So when you look at this rubric, each one of these lines, here's one line on the rubric. Here's a second line on the rubric. Each one of these lines you want to cover, and you want to cover in an area that's accomplished. So that's your goal, or actually exceeds, but at least in the accomplished area. So as you're starting working with your students and your team members to prepare for this, then you want to be going through this and saying, okay, so how are we going to cover each one of these areas? How are we going to communicate to the judges how I've done in each one of these different areas? Because this is what they're going to use to evaluate your team, how well you did. And you can have a fantastic team, but if your team can't communicate that to the judges, I should say you could have a fantastic project, but if your team can't communicate that to the judges and the different aspects of it, then that becomes a challenge. And budget your time, because you have 5 minutes. I have seen, unfortunately, I've observed teams where they spend a lot of time of their 5 minutes going into why they chose the project they did, and then they didn't have any time left to explain what the project was. So kind of balance that. Make sure that you're looking at the rubric and that you're budgeting your time and working that through when you're helping them. Your coaching goes on ahead of time. You can work with them, help them understand how that goes, what the different aspects are, and how they're going to do their presentation. It can be a skit. It can be, a lot of different ways. If it's a skit, just make sure that the entertainment value doesn't exceed the knowledge that goes with it. It can be very entertaining, but not cover a lot of information. So that's always a balance there. Then the judges will have 5 minutes here for questions and answers about it. So, if there's something that they need to understand better to be able to fill out the rubric, then they're going to probe and ask questions, and your team members should be able to respond to it. And you should have multiple team members responding, not just one. They could point at any particular student and ask them a question about that project. Then they're going to have 5 minutes to explain their robot design, why they chose their robot. There's not going to be a field there. We do expect to have a picture of the field there so they can kind of describe what their robot does. But the robot isn't going to run any missions during this time, but they will explain what it is, and then another 5 minutes for questions and answers, and then a little bit of time for reflection and a bit of opportunity for feedback from the judges. So when we're looking at these rubrics, then let's switch back to the rubrics. When we look at the rubrics, we've talked about the innovation project rubric. We also have the robot design rubric. So when your students are explaining why they did what they did with their robot, again, they want to make sure, work with them on talking points. Is what I like to say, versus a PowerPoint or anything like that. Make sure they have talking points, that they know what the key things they need to cover to where they're hitting each one of these areas of the rubric when they're communicating through there. So work with them on that, on the robot design. And then what about the core values? Now, core values doesn't have particular guidance on each one of these, but does your team know that? So essentially how this works is, during the judging session, yes, there's going to be a little bit of time for core values reflection here, but really you want to weave throughout all of these different discussions, throughout your innovation project discussion and your robot design discussion. You want to work with your students to where they're weaving hitting each one of these points as they're going through and explaining and highlighting how they have demonstrated each one of those throughout it. They need to know what the core values are if they're asked. It's a very important thing to do. But so this is kind of throughout, this is going to be evaluated throughout the entire presentation, not necessarily as a separate item on its own with that. And then at the end, they'll be able to, the judges will meet, they'll discuss the rubrics together, and then they'll submit the rubrics, and then the next team will come in. So it'll be 10 minutes breaks between the two, and then the next team comes in and is ready to present, and rinse and repeat for the next one. So that is what that looks like. And this is what the rubrics are. So your rubrics are really important. They're a very, very key part of this. So take time to work with your kids and what those rubrics are. All right, I want to pause for any questions. All right. If you have questions, feel free to speak up. There are a number of awards given out at the tournament. The Champions Award is the overall top award that is provided. And this award, there's one winner of this award, and there's up to 3 finalists depending on the tournament size. Then there's the Core Values Award, the Innovation Project Award, Robot Design Award, and the Robot Performance Award. So the Core Values, Innovation Project, and Robot Design Awards are based on the rubrics. That's based on your judging session with the rubrics. The rubrics based on your judging session, the time they have with their judges. That's what these 3 are based on. Then the Robot Performance Award is based on the score that gets on the table there. So if a team wins an award, let's say a team gets a Core Values Award, then they will not be eligible for an Innovation Project or Robot Design Award. Basically, it spreads the awards out. So one team isn't going to come in and sweep all of the awards. So you're not going to find one team with first place in everything. That's just not going to happen, because maybe you have a very good robot design and they get the robot design award, well, then they're not going to get any of the other ones, even though they may place well in that area. Now, the robot performance is an exception to that, obviously, because it is separate from that, and it's based solely on the points. And then the Champions Award takes these 4 awards together and averages them together, the scores you have for the Champions Award. So you can obviously receive, you could receive 3 different placements. You could place in robot performance, you could place in one of these 3, and you could place in the Champions Award area. So actually, I think that's the case. Actually, if you get the Champions Award, you actually may not get one of these awards. I'm going to take that back. I take that back. Yep. So the whole idea is that we want to spread the awards out. We used to give more than 1 first, second, and third place, and we don't do that anymore because of some changes in how things work, but we do definitely spread the awards out so that as many teams as possible have something at the end of the day to take home with them with that. Now, there'll be a trophy for the first place winners. The finalists for them get bragging rights for that. With that, but every team will receive a plaque that you can take back with you for your participation, that you can hang in the wall, regardless of whether you place in a category or not with an award. But that's kind of how that works for that. All right, any questions on that? All right, so with that, let's see here. Let me come back to the meeting chat here. Yeah, so how long does it last? I would expect, yeah, Candy's correct, somewhere between 4 to 5 p.m., depending on the size of the tournament. Might be a little earlier, might be a little later. Championship tournaments can sometimes go till 6 if it's a really big tournament, but I would expect 4 o'clock. 4 to 5 o'clock would be a good expectation on that. You'll get a little bit more guidance on that, but I will say, just from experience, that if you get a schedule that says that closing ceremonies will happen at 4 o'clock, sometimes things come up that are beyond our control that just take more time, and we don't always happen right on. The closing ceremonies may or may not happen right on time, because it's more important to do the job right for the kids than it is to have something happen exactly on time when it comes to that. So it's a balance that we take. All right, I want to open up the floor for any kinds of questions. Those are the biggest topics that I had. I do want to say, you know, and I've said this before, and I always say this, and that is especially your first year as a rookie team. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed. It's very easy to feel like you're not ready. And I always tell people there's 2 things. Number 1, you'll never feel like you're ready because it's a challenge. You know, it's meant to be challenging. It's meant to be something that you have to work very hard toward. And there's always areas you improve. Every year I coached, I grew as a coach. So it's not something it's like, oh, I did this 3 years, now I've arrived and I know everything. Well, maybe you have, and that's great. But for me, there was always things that I learned and grew with as a coach. So so you'll never feel ready. So the other thing is that the only way to have a rookie year is to have a rookie year. And if you're feeling like you're not ready, well, you might not be. And the most important thing for your kids is to have the experience and to have the attitude as a coach saying, hey, we're going to go and we're going to have fun, because that's one of the core values, is to have fun. And we're going to go, we're going to have fun, we're going to enjoy this. And if we win something, it's icing on the cake. But we're going to go for the learning experience of it. And because what we learn is more important than what we win. And go with that attitude with them. Have a good time, work hard, see how you do. You can always be surprised. You can always surprise yourself. And then, you know, have a good time. So So yeah, definitely just jump in, do it. If you're not sure, get that done. I will say one thing that's very important. I've sent out some emails on this. It is very important that you register your team. So if you have not registered your team for an event, please make sure you go to adventistrobotics.net and come here to FLL Challenge event registration and do this here. So here's where you'll choose the event you're going to participate in, and then you can go ahead and pay your event registration fee for that. So, and get that done. It's really important that you get that done. This covers trophies and some of the expenses that we have for the tournaments. It doesn't cover all the costs of the tournaments, but it helps with that. Tournaments cost a lot more than what it takes, what we get from tournament fees. But this is very important. And this also helps us plan for the tournament. So it's really important. I'm currently getting ready to order trophies and medallions for the students. Each kid will take away a medallion that they get, a medal they get for participating, and the plaques and all that kind of stuff. I'm in the process of starting that ordering process now. So the more we know the teams that are committed, the easier it is for us in planning and to get our schedules set up and all that kind of thing as we get ready for that. So if you can get that done, that is very helpful to us. All right, any questions on anything? Are there things going on Sabbath? That will really depend on the tournament that you're going to. So watch for your tournament director, what they say. I know that Texas and Carolina do a lot with that. But I will say this with that. Anything that happens on Sabbath is a separate from the tournament, because the tournament is separate from that. You can come and participate on things on the weekend. I know when we do our tournament in Florida, we often will do like a Friday evening, or sorry, not a Friday, a Saturday evening Vespers or something like that. And it's always a mix. It just depends. Some areas do it, some areas don't. I know as a tournament director, I found times when the teams wanted to come and do something together. And I've also found times when the teams really just wanted to go out to various churches, or maybe, in Florida, they like to go to the beach and have their own Sabbath experience on the beach, that kind of thing. So you'll just need to talk to your tournament director that you're going to, and they will let you know what options there are available for you. So I know Texas and Carolina go all out with that. So if those two tournaments, there definitely are things, but it is not an expectation necessarily that there's going to be Sabbath events as well. But this is going to be a great time for you and your kids to have some time together either way with that kind of an event. All right, any other questions? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hey Mel, I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
you had mentioned Forest Lake. I'm in Georgia actually, so we're traveling to Florida for the competition in March 26.
Right.
I guess I'm trying to plan the kind of the trip. Can we you had mentioned I guess is Forest Lake still providing, like, do they provide dorms where we can stay, or we have to?
So Forest Lake will have that available for you, and we'll be getting information out to you on that as well. So there's hotels in the area as well as dorms. The dorms will be available to you. Hoping in the next week or two here to get information out to teams that have registered for that, how to get signed up for the.
You had mentioned, what was it like? We have to pay linen or something, or bring our own linen, or
so I think
it's,
if I remember on that, it's $10. At least last year it was $10 per person per night. And you're expected to bring your own linen. They do have some linen available that you can pay for an additional fee. But if you're driving in, it's easy to bring suitcases. If when it comes to the championship, it gets a little more challenging for teams that fly in to, did I say suitcases, sleeping bags, because all the linens and everything get a little bit bulky if you're flying in when it comes to the championship. And so speaking of the championship, teams from each one of the tournaments will advance to the championship, which will be held on May 7, I believe it is, on Sunday, May 7, here at Forest Lake Academy in Orlando, Florida, Orlando area. It's a Popka technically, but that's where that will be. So you'll have that opportunity to advance onto there. So there will be teams from each tournament that have that opportunity. And when you do come, if you come to that, there obviously will be, we do have some dorm space available that fills up because this is going to be a big tournament. That does fill up, but there's also hotels in the area as well.
Hey Mel, we can arrive Friday, correct? Like even though the
Yep.
tournament is on, okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think we're most likely flying in actually. So I guess if we fly out would be maybe trying to get a flight in the night, correct? It's probably the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, I would not go too early, partly because if you're flying in and out of Orlando, depending on the time of day, you should plan to be at the airport at least 2 to 3 hours ahead of time to get through security. So
And then is it
Orlando is one of
possible?
the busier airports in the United States.
Is it possible to stay an extra night even after the
Oh yeah,
tournament?
yep. You can stay time early. So a lot of times, if you're thinking about the championship, I'll talk about this a little bit from that perspective too. If you end up coming to the championship, teams will sometimes they'll come early, or sometimes they will stay a couple extra days and just have a little bit of enjoyable time as a team, either before or after. Sometimes teams like to do it afterwards. Depends on their schedule after the stress of the tournament is over, to have some fun where they're not worried about what they're going to do the next day, on Sunday. But definitely you have that opportunity. And there's a lot of things to do in Florida if you come here. Obviously, everything from the Space Coast to, the attractions to just the beach, to parks and springs and all kinds of things like that. So so Joe, you're new at this and drinking from a fire hydrant.
I'm in the same boat too. So
Yeah, and I totally get that. And we're here to help make it a good experience for you. So I'd be glad, we'd be glad to do that. There's coaches we can get you connected with to touch base with you. The one thing I will say with that too, talking about the rookie year and that kind of thing, and that is we can talk to you a certain amount about it, but unless you experience it, you really don't have, until you've actually gone through it, you don't quite get it all. It's like once you go through it, it's like, that's what that is. That's what that means. So in part of being able to come here, when you come to the tournament, is you're going to see other teams and what they do, and you'll see some advanced teams and you'll see some regular teams, and there'll be quite a wide range. And you want to encourage your kids to talk to the other teams and see what they've done, and have those kinds of interactions with them. So it's meant to be a learning and growing experience and not just a competition. Yes, there's a competition, but the whole point of the competition really is this culminating activity that helps the kids grow through there. So how many teams advance from each region this year? It will vary depending on the size of the tournaments. I believe at least 2 teams will advance from each tournament, but we haven't fully determined that because we're still finalizing the number of teams we have at each tournament. So it will vary depending on the size of the tournament. All right. Any other questions?
a question. Does the second mentor need to go on the trip? Like if it's my administrator, like the principal, but I don't know if.
No, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
Obviously, anybody that goes on the trip has to be cleared through whatever clearance, screening process that you have as a school for overnight trips, which is often more than what we do for first. So yeah, that's not a problem with that. We don't really check that. We do check to make sure we have the right number of kids and that kind of thing. We have all the kids' consent forms from all the kids and that kind of thing. But We don't worry about we don't check the adults as carefully. So
I had a question kind of along those same lines. We've got 2 kids that are actually technically too young. They're a grade level too young for that. How do we go about,
what grade
like,
are
what do we
they
need to
in?
do with that?
What grade are they in?
Second.
Ooh, yeah, that's really too young. So they can't participate in the judging process or in the teams. They can come along and observe and be part of the experience, but they really cannot be part of that team.
Okay.
There is a program called First Lego League Explore, which is for grades 2 to 4. There's also First Lego League Discover. And I would encourage you to take a look at those programs for your younger kids, and get them involved in that, because it teaches them the design thinking concepts at a more age appropriate level for them, because a second grader, it's a real stretch for a
Yeah.
second grader to comprehend
this
everything. So
yeah, the second grader we have is that there is, I won't go into the story of them, but they're in second grade because they've been held behind because of family things and whatnot.
oh,
And then we've got a third grader that's in there as well, which the third grader and the second grader are the same age.
okay. Yeah. So anyway, technically they can't be part of the team. There is an age, I think they need to be 9 by, I can't remember the exact time. I have to look it up. I can look that up for you, but they're probably just on the young side for that. I think I can't remember what the deadline is for them being 9.
Okay. Yeah, just, as I said, we didn't want it because they got so excited about that one. We just don't have enough people to, I mean, I struggle to get a second coach there with me most days.
Right.
Most of the time it's just a teacher that's sitting in the room to make sure that there's, another adult there.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. I understand that, but we have to go by the guidelines that First gives us with that. And there are reasons for that. And it is age, there are grades, but it is also age appropriate. So yeah, they aren't that far off age wise with that. But treat them as, I mean, while they may not be an official part of the team when it comes to First, they are learning how to be part of the team, to be full contributors next year. And to get all the way in. So let this be a building year for them.
So when it comes down to that, though, then they won't be able to come to the actual tournament itself then, or
they can come to the
viewer?
tournament. They can come to the tournament. They can't be officially part of the team.
Gotcha. Okay. I wanted to make sure with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody's welcome to come to the tournament. So they really shouldn't be involved in the judging process, because that will raise some red flags to the judges if they pick up on that. But they can come and be involved and help out. And there's things they can do to be part of the experience without necessarily being part of the team on officially. So walk that fine line. I do understand where you're coming from, but we do have to
Sure, I
adhere to
understand.
the
I understand. I
guidelines
just wanted to make sure. I know we had that conversation last year because we had a different situation last year, but just every year is very different because we have,
Yeah.
I'd say only about half our kids are actually, Adventist kids, and trying to balance with parents and all that kind of stuff. It's just it's a fine line that we try to walk. So
Yep. No, totally understand. Yeah, totally understand. So I'm glad we're able to provide them the experience. So, all right. Any other questions?
Hey Mel, my kids kind of, they've dabbed with the coding, and they also, we did kind of the basic basic robot, that kind of the Lego. From there we've just kind of stuck in terms of creating our own robot design. I don't know if there's any someone
so
else
I would definitely look at YouTube. There's a couple things. If you go back to the November conference call and go through that recording, we spent some time on robots in there, and a little bit deeper dive into that kind of that concept. And I shared some links. There's robots you can build from spikeLessons.org, I think it is, other places online where they show different kinds of robots. I do encourage you to think of your robot as a platform, not that you put attachments onto. And I went into a lot more detail during that conference call. So, and that's on our YouTube channel. So just look for Adventist Robotics on YouTube and look for that November call. We spent some time going into that and showed some examples and ideas of how you can do that. And that is always a struggle because you just get the little basic robot out of the box and build it. And that's not a bad thing to get you started with a robot, but that's not necessarily, often kids get, when they build that robot, that's all they think of. They don't think of anything else. So, you know, going and looking at some of these other robots that can be built as a basic platform, taking a look at YouTube videos. And of course, there's some really high-end stuff, and that's okay. It's not about how many points you get, but just how did they do things, you know, looking at YouTube videos and stopping and go, man, how do they build that? How do they do that? And just to get the creative juices going, the creative ideas going of different opportunities for them.
Thanks.
And again, when they come to the tournament, they're going to see different robots. They'll see some basic ones, and they're going to see some really advanced robots, depending on the tournament they go to. You'll have a lot of varieties with that. And remember, it's not about the robot as well. It's more than robots. So yeah, the top scoring robot usually is not always the Champions Award winner. Because it's about what you've done with those rubrics in your project and, you know, all of that as well. Clearly, the number of points you get is fun and it's exciting, but it's not just about the number of points that you get. So that's one aspect of it, but there's other things to have in mind with that as well. But yeah, definitely go back and take a look at that November conference call, and I think you'll find some good resources and ideas there. And we also have we do have a Discord server as well. And it hasn't been super active this year. We've been working on getting it active. It's used a little bit more on the FTC side. Let me grab a link to it. I think I've shared out in the past. Actually, I'm not logged in right now. But that's a place where if you jump on it, I would not put elementary kids in there necessarily. But if you but as coaches, you can kind of chat on there and share ideas as you do that. So let me just see here. I'll send out an email rather than taking the time to get signed in. I'm not signed in on my computer here to the Discord channel right now. But that's a place you can pop on and ask questions and share ideas. So I do encourage you to jump into that. Just pepper a bunch of questions, and you may not think you have an answer, but just share what you do. Just share some ideas. So, all right. Any other questions? Appreciate the questions.
I guess a little bit for the innovation project. I know they have to, figure out. I was looking at the rubric. They got to identify a problem. I mean, but all this has to be in relation to, obviously, renewable energy, correct?
Correct. Make sure that you look at the prompt and answer the prompt that's there. So we have had times when teams had a great innovation project, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the theme for that year and what the prompt was. And so while we could compliment them on the great work they did, they didn't do the right work. So that's important to do. And there's a lot of opportunities with this year's projects to do things with it. So.
And the prompt, I mean, that's basically on the rubric.
No, that's going to be on in your, let me pull it up here. So the prompt will be in the end, I believe it's in the engineering notebook,
Mhm.
where it talks about the project there. There's a specific task that they have to be able to do. Give me just a second to get to there. Let's see here. Yeah, so that is on page page is this, page 8, where it talks about the innovation project. So identify a problem. Let's see if I can get mine actually is identify a specific problem relating to improving your energy journey. And then there's a little bit of a description of what the energy journey is. So that is what you need to do. Make sure it's related to improving your energy journey. And it talks, there's a little bit of a description there, but that's on page, I'm sorry, it's page 6 of the innovation and the engineering notebook is where that is. And when you go through the engineering notebook, there's a number of project sparks, and those project sparks give you ideas, ask questions to help get kids thinking about possibilities of projects that they could do. So there's 4 different project sparks throughout the engineering notebook to take a look at to help you with that. All righty.
I
Thank
guess
you.
how the judge is looking for in terms of project is, are they looking for like a specific, I don't know, an engineering project or some robot that will help with the problem? Like, what is the actual,
It can be,
kind of what they're looking
it
for in
is,
the solution?
it is very wide open.
Okay.
And again, just look at that page 6 in your engineering notebook and take that literally. And between that and your and the rubric, take a look at that and just make sure that it is something that you're doing to improve the energy journey. So it could be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be a robot.
Thank you, Mel.
Yep, you bet. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording